So, hello everybody. I think I might take this. I'm Vas. I'm the ROI director for L'Oréal. I'm based in Paris. I used to be actually in the Hammersmith office here for 4 years. And before that, I was actually working for Sue. I was at Business Science for 5 years before I moved to L'Oréal, and I had some previous jobs as an econometrician. So by trade, my background is very, very technical. And today we're going to talk about measurement and proving effectiveness in the absence of econometrics. So it's a Friday morning before, the Super Saturday, so we thought it would be cruel to put a lot of advanced mathematics. I'm not going to promise you there's not going to be any maths. There will be maths. But what we're trying to do is I will try to have two slides. One is going to be a summary slide of a frame about content measurement, right? Because content measurement is not just about the sales. There's a lot of other KPIs that you guys can utilize and prove the effectiveness. And the second part is I will show you a frame for those who are planning to write a paper of how you can prove incrementality with some kind of A-B basic mathematics. So it's not rocket science, and it doesn't always have to be rocket science. Now, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Is anybody here has written a paper for the IPA? Great. So there's a few of you. Is anybody planning to write a paper? So hopefully this session is going to be very useful for you. So as you said, I was a judge. I'm a technical judge. And I have also co-authored a couple of winning papers with Macan. So we won gold last year. We also won silver 2-3 years ago. And I've also co-authored with Publicis as well. So I know how it is to be writing a paper. I also know what judges are looking for. And most importantly, I'm a client, right? And I also know that we sometimes have resources limitations. So we don't always have enough budget to run econometrics. And of course, maybe the media agencies don't run it for us, or the creative agencies don't run it for us. So we always have, we're facing resource limitations. So what do we do? So hopefully the next session is going to be helpful for you. One point I would like to stress is that when it comes to writing an award, clarity for the results is very important, and context. Often there is a lack of context. So how you can prove that this campaign worked without context is a big question mark for me. So that's a little bit of advice. Clarity and context is very, very important. So I will share you with this slide. A lot of this information can be found in the entry pack. So again, for those who are planning to submit an award, look at the entry pack for the IPA, because they clarify a lot of the KPIs. So what I will try to do is I will talk to you about the frame. And as you can see, ROI is only one of the KPIs that a judge could be looking at. So when it comes to creative, and we can, before we put it on air, there's a number of research methods we can use to understand whether it's resonating with our consumers. So in a timely manner, we have creative pre-testing, in-flight testing, post-campaign sales measurement, and then some other KPIs which can contextualizing the results. So I will start with the creative pre-testing, which is a very good way of evaluating how this creative is resonating with our consumers. Do consumers like the creative? Is it creating brand awareness? Is it creating purchase intent? I think that's a very important KPI to have if you can ask your client if they have produced this kind of research. It's always good to have in the paper. When the campaign goes live, there is a number of other KPIs that, free of charge can be given to, by your client, to the media agency, and also to the creative agency if they are being asked for. These KPIs, for example, would be, the TV creative performance in flight, like Nielsen, IAG in some markets. We have a lot of digital KPIs. And, sometimes we don't always, as judges, see a lot of these digital KPIs being reported. So, for example, we can be looking at, the view-through rate, completion rates, click-through rates. And again, it's all about the context, so there has to be a benchmark. Is my view-through rate much better than the industry benchmark? Is my click-through rate of this particular campaign better than the industry benchmarks? Or another campaign, historical campaign that you guys have run? Then within that, we have brand lift measurement. Okay, maybe the client didn't pay for the pre-testing, but we have Google and Facebook, and for the, for most of the campaigns, they run free brand lift measurement studies. of which you get a lot of understanding of how your creative is performing or what the consumers versus test and control think about the creative, correct? Has anybody seen any brand lift studies with Google and Facebook? I submitted, when we did the paper for True Match, you know, we had a lot of data from, I don't remember, it was a Google brand lift study. We put that because we have lots of different creatives. We had some really good performance while the campaign was live. We were then, of course, optimizing this particular creative. So you have some free KPIs there. What else do we have? Website visits traffic is also very important to showcase, you know, campaigning, driving traffic when it's online. And again, we want to see the results during the campaign, also before and after, you know, so you can contextualize it. Fans, like engagement, and a lot of other digital KPIs, as well as earned media value. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, because my expertise is more onto the paid media. For those who are writing a paper, I think it's important you contextualize it again in terms of, is that positive engagement? Is that positive PR? Because, you know, some campaigns, we have run some campaigns at L'Oréal, we're looking at engagement, but some of the comments are very cynical. Some of the comments are not always positive. So judges, who I forgot to say earlier, are very cynical. When you're in a judging room, people are very cynical about all the information. So try to bulletproof it, making not only quantitative statements, but also qualitative statements. Clear? Now let's go to the actual results, and this is where the most fun is. And this is where a lot of the, you know, the authors focus the attention on, which I think it's important you saw, you know, results before the campaign went on live and during. So what a lot of people do is they provide sales information. Okay, so when my campaign went live, we drove that much incremental sales, or our market share went from number 2 to 3. That is good, but it's not enough. It is really important, again, to showcase what were the sales without campaign, during, and then after. Often, the after is forgotten, and what we're looking for is long-term impact. So, you know, showcase the, you know, the performance before and after the campaign, show that the campaign has worked for a longer period of time, and more importantly, again, contextualize it. Was that a difficult thing to do? For example, maybe the industry was increasing. Like, let's say, sales for makeup have been booming over the last 2 to 3 years. So if I do a campaign and I say, okay, during 2018, my sales went from 1 million to 1.5 million. Well, but everybody's sales were going from everybody's sales were increasing dramatically. So you always have to show versus the category trend. Again, the same thing for your market share. Okay, show market share before, during, after, and contextualize it how difficult that result was. So that has to do with the business objectives. But, you know, as a marketeer, doesn't have only business objectives, we have marketing objectives. So there we need to see things like penetration and repeat rate. Has my campaign increased my penetration? Has increased my repeat rate? So these is KPIs which are not free, but, you know, most of the clients will subscribe to Kantar panels, JFK panels, and they can give that to you. And be smarter. Look at it by audience, right? We utilize certain campaigns to drive particular audiences, or maybe our campaign was working for an audience versus other. Showcase that to the judges, again, before, during, and after the campaign, and to some extent versus your competitors, right? This is a data pool, it's there. Then we have the campaign's uplift, which is the second part of my presentation. So you have to show that this campaign had an uplift. But an uplift of 5% for, let's say, an automotive industry might be easily achieved. In beauty, it may be very difficult. When it comes to colorants, for example, we spend a lot of money on advertising, but colorants is not a category where the consumers are going to see the advert and then, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to Boots and I'm going to buy hair color. So the uplift needs to be contextualized. When you see chocolate, okay, great. People see a chocolate advert, maybe it's much more elastic to media, so maybe the elasticity there is 15%. So again, contextualize it versus a benchmark, and the benchmarks are very different. So uplift is good, there's A/B testing, and of course we have econometrics, where you can prove ROI. There's a lot of other tools in the industry. We have consumer mix modelings, there's A/B testing. It would be great if we see a more plethora of and usage of these kind of tools. You know, it's not just MMMs that can actually showcase the ROI. You know, you can have digital attribution, multi-touch attribution, panels, consumer mix, and so on and so forth. Be a little bit creative and showcase, variety in terms of the approaches. So let's assume that you can provide an uplift and an ROI with whatever method. Then what about your post-campaign brand tracking? Right? It kind of completes the loop. So did I create awareness among my consumers? And then linked, of course, to this campaign, what about the rest of my brand KPIs? Because sometimes, driving sales or stealing market share might not be that difficult, but moving your consumers, creating that brand love may not be such an easy job. Again, if you have this data, provide it to complete the story and the consumer journey. Last but not least, I would say, what about long-term ROI? This has been the topic of the industry for the last, I don't know how many years. It would be great to see the impact of this campaign in the long term. And there's a few ways you can do that. In a very basic and simple way, what I usually say is when we write a paper is like showcase that you debase, right? Debase is that we increase the base. So let's say our sales without any promotional activity is about 1 million week on week, every other week. After the campaigns, and this is what we've seen with the True Match campaign, is that the base just shifted, and it remained, let's say, at 1.5 million per week for a long period of time. So that visually you can show. You can look at the customer lifetime value, right? Because you are increasing your penetration, you are increasing their loyalty, and maybe some of the consumers, the basket is increasing as well. So that way you can show lifetime value. And again, compare with other competitors and other clients, because this data is available. Kantar can do the pull for you. Is that clear so far? So, but as we said earlier, the judges are real cynical people. And I am probably one of the most cynical people in the world. So you have to also showcase that, okay, you increase your market share. It was part of the campaign. But what was happening in all the other drivers that drive sales? And this is where most of the times, a lot of the people who don't particularly win a paper, they write, okay, everything else remained the same. Really? Did everything else remain the same? So you have to showcase that the price hasn't changed. The average price has not changed, the AUP, for example, because a lot of the activity that happens is, a lot of the sales actually in many industries is driven by promotion. So when there is a campaign, you have to clearly show what the AUP was during, before, and after the campaign, and you showcase that there hasn't been intense promotional activity. And if you're smart, you can actually say, okay, my boots AUP during the campaign was £5. After the campaign was £5, or before the campaign was also £5. The same about distribution, right? How is your distribution changing? You have to reference, price, promotions, distribution, maybe your share of voice. So think of the whole marketing mix. That needs to be referenced in the paper. Otherwise, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, otherwise the judges would be a little bit skeptical about it, because the papers tend to be judged by industry panel and client panels. And clients do understand business very well. So that's the first part of the presentation. A lot more can be found in the entry pack. In the entry pack, the team has done a great job talking about behavioral change, reputational change, things which are great to add as well. I'm not going to talk about it now. But over the next 5 minutes, what I will do, I will tell you how we can calculate an ROI, right, without econometrics. So this is where the maths part comes in, and it's very, very basic. Most of the measurement is based on A/B testing, right? I go on air with a campaign. So here you can see that, let's say we have, I was talking about a colorant. Let's say we have L'Oréal Paris Excellence colorant on air in August, July 2014. So this is the campaign period. As you can see, my sales were about 5 million, let's say, in terms of pound. How do I know how much of it was incremental? Do you guys have any ideas? How would you go about it? Come on, I'm sure you know. Yes? Great. So that's the A/B testing, right? So let's say we have, I don't remember the numbers behind, but let's say we drove about 2 million sales for the total period. Of course, that's because we also promoted the product, there was distribution, there's a lot of things. So what our colleague here is suggesting is that we're going to look at another period, right? So let's take the period, we need a control period, okay? So we're going to compare our sales when we had the same marketing activity but without a campaign. And as you can see here, sales were a bit lower, but not dramatically lower. So, my God, the incremental impact is not huge. This exercise can be done at the, for e-commerce, which you talked earlier, for your boot sales. You can look at this exercise at Boots, at Tesco, at everything, and then aggregate everything, okay? But we're not done yet. Because 2 points to create incrementality is not enough. Because what is happening here, let's say I'm going to look at the sales for the industry, right, or the category. What I see, and quite often for a lot of the FMCGs or a lot of actually industries, there is seasonality, there is market trends. So we need, the whole idea behind it is that you need not only 2 points to calculate the incrementality, you need 4 data points. Do you guys agree? And the reason why we need that is because my control is going to capture all the market dynamics that my particular franchise is not capturing. So as you see, I can see that during August, where my campaign was on air, the total category, assuming that this is kind of an indexed sales, the total category is dropping, which of course makes sense, and we see that in a lot of industries. So this is when I had my campaign. So if I only look at my sales when I had the campaign minus the control period that our colleagues suggested, it's going to give me incrementality, but actually the base is a lot lower in August than usually it is, because here you can see that when the top red is lower and a lot lower than when we are in October.